So last week we discussed charter proposed charter amendments. This is to go in front of the voters in November. So we tossed around some ideas last week. Different council members had different ideas on amendments they would like to make for the charter. And again, the voters would have the final say. So we asked that each of the council members submit their suggestions to Ms. Brooks. She has compiled them into a spreadsheet. And so what we're going to do is go through section by section. I emailed the group later this afternoon. If you don't have it, I would pull up my email because that's the format I'm going to pull. Instead of just jumping around from person to person, we're going to go section by section and make a motion for each section as we go through. And then by the time we are complete, we will then move on to the rules and procedures. And if there's any charter amendments that needs to be a rules and vice versa, just let me know. So the first was there was a suggestion to update the Article 3, Section 3.01 of the Charter. I don't know if you can bring it up, but I'm going to go ahead. I don't want to read it all, but it is about number selection, term, and term limits. There were 4 council members that made suggestions. Each of them suggested a 3-year term limit. So I was one of those that suggested a 3-year term limit. Councilmember Salgado, Primos, and FMU offered 3-year terms. Excuse me, not term limits, terms. So at this point, I would like to open the table to see if anybody else would like to discuss the idea of a 3-year term. The idea that we had discussed last time was to not have a major sway, so there's not 4 one year and then 3 the other. So the majority, we would like them staggered. So that was an idea that we had talked about, and we have an example of how that could work. But at this time, I would like to discuss the idea of a 3-year term and then introduce the idea of a term limit. Mr. Traylor.
You said exactly what I was wanting to separate. So, yeah, honestly, 3-year terms is great. I think we have consensus here. I'd like to make a motion to adopt 3-year terms in Section 30.3.01 on the Forney City Charter for the ballot in November.
So at this point, the motion on the table is to make an amendment to the charter for a 3-year term in lieu of a 2-year term for every council position. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Salgado. Any further discussion or questions on that?
I just have a question for Jenny. Do we need to clarify at this time a 3-2-2 election cycle, or is that something we do later?
You're doing terms. We're going to do
terms
an individual one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll call for a vote to amend the charter from a 2-year to a 3-year term to place on the ballot in November. Motion carries unanimously. The next item that was suggested through most of the submissions was a term limit. Who would like to speak on term limits?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Traylor.
In theory, I love it. In practice, I am fearful that this will be we run the risk, from my perspective, of having an unelected official in a carryover term until we either appoint and or go to a special election for that specific item. We've had lackluster involvement in the Forney political scene for the past 20 years. And once again, I am a proponent of term limits in theory. I think our motives here are great and pure. My fear, once again, is in action, we will not have the intended consequence that we desire. If we put this in place, and I just want to put some what-ifs out, and here's the what-ifs I want us all to consider. Our what-ifs, we have 2 council members up for election, and we have nobody come back up as an incumbent, and they're both termed out. What do? We have 2 unelected officials that are going to be carryover officials that are not elected going into the next session that we then have to run another special election and or appoint. And if we appoint, we run the risk of political leanings, having somebody come in, unelected officials, being appointed to a term, and or we run another special election which will cost the county money. And if we once again have nobody run for that specific term, we are disqualifying people based off of time versus practice. So once again, theory, love it. If we had people knocking down our doors to run for council, I would be all behind this. That's my only concern with this.
I'm going to ask Ms. Brooks a question. Yes, you have something to say?
You cannot appoint for anything more or anything less than a
legislation. Ms. Salgado.
I definitely hear your concerns. I've thought about this a lot too, obviously, and I'm very in favor of term limits. Especially, I mean, the term limits that I had suggested was 3 consecutive terms, which if we went to 3-year limits, if that passed by the voters, that would be 9 years. And that seems like a good amount of time for someone to serve the city before it's time for someone else to step in. I understand, I mean, I can see, that could be a possibility, especially with the way Forney is now, currently with our political climate, but I'm hoping that it will change in the future. I also know that a lot of cities around us have term limits, and I don't see this huge dearth of people wanting to run. When I've paid attention to cities around us that during their term or during their election cycles, they don't have a lot of people running, but they have. I've never seen an open seat, I guess is what I'm saying. So, Rockwall, Rolette, Frisco, Mesquite, there's a lot of cities around us that do this. So, I don't know. I'm very much in favor of it. So,
Ms. Primos?
I would have to say the same thing as Sarah, that I'm very much in favor of it. And again, I know I speak a lot about the military, but there's a waiver. We can come up with a waiver that if this situation does come up, well, there's a waiver for that, and we would have to make a rule that if, for example, someone is at their 9 years and then no one is going to come up, so does that person say, well, I would like to ask to be able to serve one more time, even though this is my term limit, or is there a special election, or, whatever, because we have to put that in there just in case that does happen. But as we saw today, things are changing. We saw 9 people come here today, and I just think that our political climate will be changing, and we're going to go forward. I have faith in that.
Ms. Schlensker?
And I agree. I think the climate's changing, but I also look at it that this is the citizens' vote. If we're not doing our job, they have every reason to kick us out after 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. If somebody is continuing to serve and they're doing their due diligence and they're doing what's right, and coming back to Mr. Traylor's point, I would rather have somebody sign up for a 4th term who knows what they're doing, who has the best interests of the city in it, than somebody who's coming in with a personal interest, and let the citizens decide. Coming back to what Ms. Primus is saying, yes, our climate is changing. We just did a charter change in 2020. If 5 years from now, the council that's sitting here, be it whoever, chooses to review this charter and reevaluate the political climate and where things are going, and if there is a continuation of more and more people being involved, then that's something that they can deal with at that point in time. I just worry about taking the power away from the citizens to have a choice and it may be enforced. I mean, and I agree with Ms. Traylor. Term limits in theory sound great, but it's also what's your best out there in the pool. What are you getting for it? So I guess that's my biggest concern.
Salgado?
Just to go off of what Ms. Schlensker was saying, I think that it's easy to say, well, citizens can just vote them out the next term if they don't like them. It's actually not quite that easy. It's much harder to vote out an incumbent, especially if an incumbent has been in office for a decade, 10 plus years. It's not that easy to always have someone voted out. And I think that, putting that aside, I think that no matter which side of this as council we feel that we are on, I think that it is our duty to put this before the residents on the ballot, and they get to tell us if they want term limits. I mean, we each have our own opinions, but I think that we owe it to our residents to put it on the ballot in November, and if they don't want term limits, then they're going to vote for that. And then, like you said, it's done. We've evaluated the charter, but I think that by not even putting it on the ballot, that we're not letting the residents speak. What do they want? Do they want term limits? Do they want 3-year terms? And the other things that we're talking about. So I think that we owe it to them to at least put it on the ballot, let them speak, and then we move forward with whatever the vote is.
But really quick, Mr. Traylor, what I find interesting is that I agree. It's not often easy to kick out an incumbent, but Mayor Lewis did that with a very senior council member who'd been on the board, on the council for many years. Ms. Primus, same situation. So if you look at the last 2 election cycles, you've seen a shift in voters saying it's time for a change. So I agree with you. In a bigger scale, congressmen, senators who have a war chest, but when it comes to Forney politics, I think you sometimes see a grassroots effort like both these ladies were able to do that came in and swept out incumbents.
Would you be amenable to adding some sort of a triggering clause to this if we implement term limits of some whatever term they may be. Let's say my scenario comes true and we have people that are not running, we have open seats that are going through. Would you be willing to add a clause in the charter that causes the council at that time to reevaluate and be able to either reevaluate this term limit scenario? Because once again, my scenario may never come true. Could just be a big what if. But I do think there needs to be some sort of a protection here, just in case that it forces the council at that time to go back and reevaluate the scenario, and it's triggered. This is article whatever of our city charter. We have to reevaluate term limits because we are now in a situation where we have gone through an election, we paid for it, now we're going to a special election, we're going to pay for this. And what if nobody goes for that again?
There we go. My opinion of this is if you are here 9 years, imagine where we're going to be 9 years from now. Imagine the influx of people that are going to come in 9 years. I mean, it's overwhelming. And as we saw tonight, with the culture shift and the change, I hope the worst doesn't happen, that we would end up with a vacancy. But I'm going to err on the side of the future of Forney is definitely going to be different than we're sitting right now. Again, I think it's just best to give it to the voters. What do they want? So I would like to actually make a motion to go ahead and do a 3-year term limit to be placed on the ballot in November if I have a second. Second from Ms. Salgado. Further discussion or questions? Mr. Chambers.
Yeah, I'm just, as we look today, I'm running unopposed. Sarah's running unopposed. So what if the scenario that y'all talking about today, that 3-year terms, we're up right now at that 3-year terms, and no one comes right now, we in that same deal what we're talking about right now. It's right here. It's if we have 3-year term right now, it ends it right now, we're unopposed. So we go back to having a special election.
But that's 6 years from now.
We're talking about right now. If I'm just giving an example. If it ends right now with 3-year term, we don't have an opponent right now.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Ms. Salgado?
I was just going to reiterate that I definitely see, I hear y'all's concerns. It actually wasn't something I'd even thought about until, brought it up last council meeting. But I think we owe it to the voters to let them tell us if they want us to have term limits or if they want us to just have the ability to serve for as long as we're willing to. I don't know. I just think it should be up to the voters.
Ms. Ramos?
Same thing. I do believe the voters are everything. Our residents are everything. We're nothing without them. So they should be able to decide. And I just wanted to reiterate that I think that you are unopposed this time. You've only been here 2 years. And just like we've been saying, we're going to change it to 3 years because you don't really get an opportunity to really get your foot dug in until 3 years is what I'm understanding, since I'm the newest person here, is that you don't really get to dig in until you're at your 3rd year. So we need to be at 3 years at least. And so people still want to see what you got. So maybe that's why you're unopposed.
Ms. Schlonsberg? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you done? Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not off yet.
So, I'm a big one. I give it to the voters. So then what I ask of this council, and I ask of anybody who's on a board or a commission, is that we don't sit on our hands and not encourage people to be involved. So I challenge, just like many times we've said before, that we put it out there that you have to be involved. Mm-hmm. If we're going to put it in the voters' hands, then we need to ask the voters and the citizens of Forney to be willing to step up so that we continue to get the best who will serve this city in the right way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do what's best for the city.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I beat you to it. I'm on down here.
Go ahead.
Listen, I'll get on board with you guys on this, but I need a commitment from everybody in this room, including council. The political climate in the city has to be tamped down 1,000%. Yeah. The reason why people do not run right now is because they're scared to death their families and their personal lives be dragged through the mud. It's bottom line. And let's just say the quiet part out loud. That's what it is. It's been going on for years. It's got to stop. And that's why people are not running. And that's what's happening. And it's ridiculous. I, for one, am not going to tolerate it any further. And I I ask kindly everybody in this room to do the exact same thing. That it needs to stop, and it needs to stop today. That's the only way I'm going to get on board with this, because in 9 years from now, if we still have the same climate, guys, it's going to be the same thing.
Agreed. Ms. Delgado?
I was just going to say I agree with what you were saying, Michelin Skirna. I wanted to know how you suggest that we do that. How do we encourage people to get more involved?
I think Mr. Traylor nailed it. For the 18 years I've been out here, it's been one side versus the other side. I won't name names, but all of us know the elephant in the room. And at some point in time, we're seeing the Davy Madisons, we're seeing these gentlemen, and I'm sorry, I just happen to know him from a restaurant all the time because he talks all the time, like you said. We're seeing this new influx. Forney is not the Forney of 18 years ago. We're diverse. We're changing. And the past is the past. And as long as we have one foot in the past and we have one foot in the future, we're going to be stuck. So each one of us has to reach out and be willing to talk about the benefits of serving on council, to serving our city. But again, we can't change. Everybody has a right to say what they want to say, period. That's one thing I said when I got on this council is I was going to listen to everybody who wanted to say something to me, good, bad, and different. Because if we don't listen to everybody, then there's three sides of the story. There's yours, mine, and somewhere in the middle there's the truth. And so we have to be willing to listen with open ears, open eyes, and understand that we're not always going to agree. But that's what makes this city and this country so fabulous, is we don't have to agree. So we just have to learn to support each other whether or not we like each other. It's like family. I love you. I don't always like you, but I'm going to love you. And I love this city, and I love the citizens of this city. And it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting to move us forward.
You made great points, but we talk about the social media and all the attacks. But that comes with sitting at this desk. When you choose to sit at this dais, you are accepting that you are a target, absolutely. But that does not take away from your responsibilities to the residents. So I wrote some comments and I sent out an email, but I just want to share one part that I had wrote in my comments where one of the key responsibilities of city council members is to keep their constituents informed and motivated about the progress and plans for the city. I don't get that from the city council as a resident. A lot of that comes secondhand from folks who gather that information separately and spread it out. So one way to combat that would be the city council having that voice. And I hear y'all talk, and it's fantastic. It's informed, it's intelligent, it's articulate. But I'm getting that because I'm in this room, and there's a lot of folks out there who are not getting that. And if they did, I think there would be a large benefit. And I'll use my own self. Ms. Salgado came to my HOA, and I had no plans of ever doing this. But after chewing her ear off, and Councilman Chambers, they was there too. After chewing their ear off for an hour, I realized, you know what, they are making moves. They are doing stuff for the greater good, regardless of what I see on social media, and that spurred me to take action. We just need to do that. I say we, my time is short. Y'all need to do that going forward, because if you're going to campaign on it, it doesn't end the day you take the seat. You need to continue that, regardless of the beating that you take on social media. Everybody can see through that. You just have to be adult and disciplined enough to handle yourself as such, to where you don't lower to that level. And I just want to let you know, lastly, it's a unique opportunity to be able to share the successes of the city that you guys have personally done. And I just don't think we're doing a good enough job imparting that information to the public. And if we did, I think we would continue to see groups like we did tonight for the EDC of not just residents, but of absolute professionals who are prepared and have the skill set that we need to go in the right direction.
Well said, Daniel. Thank you very much. And my final comment on this is the best way to lead is to lead by example. So by us being out there, like Ms. Salgado going and speaking at the OHOA, for us going there and empowering others to do what they can for the city and to not be afraid, they will watch us and learn from us. And so we're the best examples. We can't control everybody else's actions. We can only control our own and our demeanor and our discipline. So with that being said, the motion's on the table. Discussion is closed. I'll now call for a vote for a for 3-year term limit to be placed on the ballot. Motion carries unanimously. There's one other suggestion that was made for Article 3, Section 3.01, and that is for staggered terms. And this is so we don't have 4 positions open one time and then 3 positions open another. So we got a recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Brooks, for presenting this, where there's a recommendation that, and this I guess would be placed in the wording on the ballot, but place 1, 3, and 5 would be 1 3-year term. The mayor in place 2 would be a second election in the following year, and then the 3rd year would be place 4 and 6. And in that way, there won't be any major sway of 4 and 3. Is that correct?
I do have a question. So 1, 3, 5, we're talking 3-year terms all at the same time. So that's 3 up at one time, correct?
Correct.
Can we do 1 in May, 1 in November? So do 2 in May, 1 in November. And the reason I'm asking, it's very simple. The reason I'm asking here, once again, the purpose of this is very simple. The purpose of this is to dilute politics in this particular instance. Allowing 2 up and 1 to run by itself in an off-cycle election, I do believe will keep with the intent of what we are trying to perform here. What we're trying to do is, once again, right now, our current scenario is we have a quorum of council expiring every other year.
Hey, I understand what you're saying. But one will be running longer than the rest of us. Well, the rest of the council. So their term may be a little longer if they go from May to November.
Yeah.
So that's like, 6 months? Yeah, 6 months.
You said it'd be very expensive.
It makes on paper, it sounds great there.
I like it.
It's, you know, you'll have 3 offices.
Can you put on your microphone?
You'll have 3 positions, 1, 3, and 5, which will be up for election next year. If the charter amendments pass, they'll be elected for 3 years. The next year, in 2005, the mayor in place 2 will be up, and they will be elected for 3 years. And then the following year, it will be places 4 and 6, and they'll be 3 years. And then that pattern follows throughout the rest of the time. You'll have 3, 2, 2, and that language is what will be in the charter.
Would that just be an issue the first time we do this, and then from then on, it's always November, right? So they would serve from November to November, is that correct? Is that just an issue the first time that we go, like as we phase into this cycle, as we're talking about someone serving for longer?
Your general election would always be in May.
But I'm saying if we set it
Can we change it to November, so your general election would always be in
for just one of the places?
No,
The answer is yes or no. Can you do that? You cannot do it. Or you don't want to do it.
Clarify.
I think you can have 2 elections a year. That would have to be something sent for an opinion.
Opinion by who?
Either the Attorney General's or the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah, that's way too deep. 322 is fine. Motion to approve as presented for the November election.
I have a motion from Mr. Trailer to present, and I will repeat it. Place 1, 3, and 5 would be next year, 2024, for a 3-year term. Mayor in place 2 in 2025. Mayor place 4 and 6 in 2026. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Schlenzer. Any further discussion or questions? Then I'll call for a vote. Motion carries unanimously. On to section 3.04, mayor and mayor pro tem. It was kind of funny that Ms. Salgado and I had the same thing. We would like that the charter to be amended to change the pronouns. It's always him and he. So I like the pronouns to be changed to him member and would only cast a vote in the case of a tie. I believe the city of Terrell does this. So I'm gonna
I just want to give a little bit of background here on this as well, because I know this may sound controversial on its face value, but once again, we've already discussed this briefly. There are a couple things that I will touch base on here. After fully reading the charter, I believe there are things that we have done based off of precedent versus rule in the past. One of those items that I have not been able to locate in the charter nor the council rules is anywhere that allows the mayor to place an item on an agenda without a second. Am I correct, Ms. Barnes-Smith? So I believe that is something that has been done based off of precedent in the past versus rule. And from my reading of the charter, from this point forward, that will no longer be allowed since that is not a council rule. So from
We're not changing the procedures because it's been not followed.
correct. So from this day forward, the mayor will require a second, which is currently in line with our charter and our city council code of conduct and rules. The reason why I put this on here is simple. I wanted to open a debate for all this to really talk about. And guys, we're going to say the quiet part out loud again. It's going to be uncomfortable. We're going to have a conversation. Mayor Lewis, no disrespect to you by any means. But if we go back many years, the issues that we've experienced in the Forney has been from a slew of mayors that we've had in the past. Some have been, if we look at what has happened, there have been many times that we have seen people use the city as their own personal playground. That is something I want to stop today. This is nobody's personal playground. We are a council of 7, not of 1. With that being said, we do need to have checks and balances within our own organization. I 100% wholeheartedly understand the need for having a central figure for mayor to sign documents and so on and so forth, and I agree with that respect. However, I would like to make sure that as a council, when we look at our mayor, we are able to understand that our mayor is here for their constituents, not for a personal gain. Removing the mayor as a voting member as we go through this process and adding only in cases of a tie, once again, would limit some of the power of the particular position that people seek. And if I'm looking at people seeking this particular position, once again, has been done for personal gain and hubris. And let's be clear, I mean, I could run for mayor, I could run for place 6. Which one sounds better? Realistically, there's no difference to the public. There's no difference for anybody here. We all have the same vote. We all have the same weight. But there has been a pattern that has been perpetrated that has caused city staff to be uncomfortable and uncertain. They're uncertain about what's coming. They're uncertain about who's in power. They're uncertain about intent. And I, for one, intend to stop that today by at least having this conversation, saying it out loud. I no longer will allow our staff to be scared due to sways and power. We are figureheads. I looked at our city charter. It's literally A through G what our duties are. It's very simple. And nowhere in those duties does it state that we direct city staff. Nowhere. And once again, I'm open to debate on this. I'm not hard set on this particular item, but I am passionate with this item that we go through and at least have a conversation that removes the allure from running for mayor because for personal reasons and or gain. Once again, anybody can run for any place on council here and have a vote and have the same amount of authority as anybody else. So I'm off my soapbox now, ladies and gentlemen, but there we go.
This is very intriguing. Do you know of any other cities that have this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so Terrell allows the mayor to vote last, basically, instead of running first, going through the process. And once again, this is just a conversation that I want to at least have with council. This is not something I'm dead set on. I at least want us to have this conversation and talk about uncomfortable things. And it's not something that's easy to go through. But what I want to do here is, once again, keep the power with council where it should be and allow our city staff some breathing room with us ways and mayors that come in. I don't want them to be nervous. I don't want them to be in fear for their jobs because somebody comes in making promises to make big changes.
just to answer your question, yes, the city of Frisco does this actually. Their mayor only votes in the case of a tie or if they have to have a certain number of council members vote. So there definitely is precedence in our own area. I'm just going to go back to what I said before, that I think we need to let our residents decide if they want the mayor to have a vote or not. I think every single thing we're talking about, regardless of personal opinion, it's worthy of being on the ballot, and let's listen to our residents. I've lived here a really long time. I've lived here since 2007 and didn't pay attention to city politics much when we first moved here because this was our 2-year stop out of college. Don't know what happened. But once I started paying more attention, it was a little bit disheartening with the political side because it was like, well, this is the way things are. They don't really change. You kind of watch it cycle after cycle with exactly what Mr. Traylor was talking about, with just a lot of things that seemed like as a voter, it didn't really, it seemed like as a voter you didn't have much of a voice. And I'm really hoping with these charter amendments that our voters see that they do have a voice and that they do have a choice in how their government is going to run. I don't really think that's a choice that our residents have had in a long time. We did have some charter changes a few years ago, but they were not specifically addressing the structure of the government and the limit of the power of the city council. And that's what I really want to, that's why I want to do all this. I want our residents to have the ultimate say in how much government reach does the Forney City Council have. So, I definitely think that the vote for the mayor is worthy of being on the ballot.
Ms. Schlesinger?
Well, and I think it's like anything else. Sometimes you've got to get uncomfortable for change. And we're sitting here talking about, the next 5, 10, 15 years. And this is something that I agree. I think it needs to go to the voters. I think that it's a political climate that it's going to take something like this possibly to shake stuff up and restart. And I think, unfortunately, we're at a point where that's maybe what it takes. And it's sad, but it's true, unfortunately. You hate to do something drastic, but I agree. I think it goes to the voters. If the voters feel that it's worthy, then we move forward with it.
I feel like it comes from a bad place, but I don't think it has to, right? We were talking about hard conversations, but I don't think this has to come from a negative place. There's some pros to the mayor, losing those being removed as a voting member. And just off the top of my head, it's going to protect the mayor. We're going to avoid conflicts of interest, right? If we spread that out, we're going to avoid that conflict of interest because, let's be honest, the city council does not benefit if the mayor is constantly under a microscope and everything is judged or the decisions made at the dais. Second, it's going to encourage more collaboration. I think that is key, is that we all collaborate if we're sitting at the dais, and the mayor should be at the table engaging in those conversations the entirety. And so, voting last, I think, is great. Let the council, the constituents voted in the council, let's get the conversation out there, and then we'll bring the mayor in last. Also, once again, we want to kind of take care of the mayor, right? Because it's almost like the headpiece on the car, right? If she falls, the rest of us will fall. And then lastly, just better balance of power, right? It's going to show that your vote actually means something. So that way when they go to vote for city council, or maybe they want to run for city council, they'll see that they're not just a bunch of, what do they call it, do boys or do girls, right? Who just will do attaboys, right? So it'll show that there's a balance of power. So I don't think that this has to come from a negative spot. I think there are absolute pros to having this presented.
Primos?
I'm going to say that from old school, I remember learning in school that I think I'm the oldest one besides Mr. Daniels, maybe.
No.
Yes, I am. So when what I learned was that the mayor had the key to the city, and everybody fell under the mayor. So this new concept of you have a city manager and all that was different for me. I had to understand the whole system a little differently. And then, okay, the city is run by the city manager, and then I was to understand that the mayor, like a chain of command, city manager, then the mayor, and then, us like that as a chain of command. Well, now I'm finding out that, we're all the same, but then at the same time, the mayor is looked upon from other cities as a higher ranking person. That's never going to change because that's just how it's looked at from other cities, other places. If you say to anybody, I'm the mayor of blah, 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 they Oh, as opposed to I'm the city council. That's just what it is, right? And then also, does the mayor get more money?
They do.
Okay. I'm not gonna say how much or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, does that not set the precedence as well?
Should we amend their pay down since we're having this conversation?
I'm just asking. I'm just asking. No, seriously. This is what I'm just looking at how I learned the government system when I was growing up. But I mean, I know it's old school. And I'm just trying to figure it out. That's it.
Ms. Lunsford?
No, and I agree, and I think there's a respectful due diligence to the mayor. The mayor is a position of respect. You represent our city. It's something that by no means does that need to be taken away from. But I come back to that we were talking about staff and staff being uncomfortable. I don't care who's sitting up here in these 7 seats. I don't care if they're council members or the mayor, whoever. There is a respect that is due to our staff for what they do, and there is the chain of command is Mr. Daniels. You know, it goes through Mr. Daniels, whether he likes it or not, sir. And bottom line, I'm going to shut up now. I started to say something, but you're experienced, sir. You're very experienced, and that's what makes it so great. But there's a stability that comes with that. And like we've talked before with council, and Daniel's right, there's all these positives, but it's also the council's responsibility to hold each other accountable for their actions. And that's one thing that hopefully we can continue to do as we move forward.
All right, Mr. Traylor, would you like to make a motion to remove the mayor as a voting member and would only cast a vote in the cases of a tie?
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Traylor to put this on the ballot for the voters to vote on in November. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Chambers. Any further discussion or questions?
The money.
No. We got to get through all of these. I'll call for a vote. I'm going to be here all night. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move up a little bit quicker. On to section 3.05. This was regarding how to, most of the responses, there were 3 responses to this one, regarding how to fill vacancies. One was if a person, this was my recommendation, one, if a person resigns their position because they are running for another position, so it's within 90 days, such as the place 6 position, that we don't necessarily have to fill that seat for the remainder of the term. That was the recommendation I made. I also said that vacancies in the city or the mayor must be filled at a special election until a general election occurs that would fill the vacant position within 90 days after the vacancy occurs. And thirdly, if a vacancy is a result of a voluntary resignation, he or she is ineligible to run until 3 terms have passed. I have some recommendations from Ms. Salgado that only special elections would be filling vacant positions. And Ms. Primos recommended to not fill vacancies that will be empty 90 days or less. Very similar to what I had suggested. Vacancies that will be empty more than 9 days will be filled with a special election. And I'm sorry, Mr. Ethemiu said he is not in favor of filling vacancies at all with a special election, that you would like to continue with the special appointment. So would any of y'all like to speak on your recommendations on filling vacancies? Oh, Mr. Chambers.
I just think if you look at 90 days, that's what, 6 council meetings, roughly? So at 6 council meetings, you're looking at a lot of stuff that may very interest to the public that we may need to vote on. I think that's 90 minutes is too long. I mean, 90 days, I'm sorry. 90 days is too long to not have that body in the seats to vote on.
Would you recommend a special election or an appointment?
In 90 days, the cost, you got to look at the cost of the city. I'd like to have a appointment.
So within 90 days, you're wanting an appointment. After 90 days would be a special, greater than 90 days would be a special election.
Yes.
Ms. Brooks.
Once again, by the Texas Constitution, in order to fill any vacancy 120 days or more, you have to have a special election. Now, you can set in the charter that you can fill it within 90 days. But other than that, that's the only time you get to make an appointment. That 90-day period.
Thank you. Ms. Salgado, yes.
Yeah, my recommendations were similar to Ms. Primus's. I think that the resident should always have the final say. So I want to always have a special election if it's if it's 120 days or more. It's actually the city of Duncanville that does not fill their seats if it's 90 days out from the election. And I'm assuming that's because they're set up similarly to us. That it's 90 days out from the general election that you register to run and all your paperwork's filed. So yeah, there would be, like Mr. FMU, he's just here for just a handful of meetings. So, we would still have other members of council. We would still have quorum and all that if we wound up having an empty seat. But yeah, I'm very much in favor of always holding a special election. The residents should always be picking who sits up here.
So, let me ask you a question. If it's within 90 days, you want a special election?
No. I'm in favor of leaving it vacant, but I'm not opposed to doing an appointment for just 90 days. Similar to what we just did, but if it's longer than that, I think we should always have a special election, always.
Daniel?
I think it's Sandy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sandy?
Yes, I think then, I understand what you're saying, Cecil, about making decisions and all that, but isn't that why we just decided to make the mayor a deciding vote? So say if we don't have that one vacant, then we will still, if there's a tie or whatever, then we'll bring the mayor in to actually make that final vote.
No.
No, because we'd be down to 6, which means it's a 3-3 tie. That would be the problem. We would have the tiebreaker. So if somebody,
Can you turn off real quick?
basically, if there's 7 of us, if somebody steps down and we're sitting here with 6, if it's a 3-3 tie, we would be tied, and I'm not sure. Yeah. So that's the only thing that's concerning is sometimes, since I've been sitting on council, most of our have been there's been 1 or 2, but moving forward, who would know what the future council, you could sit here and have continuous ties, which would basically, cause a clog in the system. Well, I agree. It's just my concern is that somebody could sit there and say it's only 2 meetings, but depending on what's on the agenda for 2 meetings, it could be a really big deal. So.
Did Sandy, did you want to continue on? No. So I hear what we're saying, but I think the repercussions of the perception, if we find ourselves in the same position where we have 2 incumbents unopposed and nobody runs, that'll give the community the perception that nobody's running. Why doesn't anybody want to run? Now these social media aspects, now all these things begin to bubble up. So my thought process is avoid that. Give the council appoints every other leader within the city. Give them the opportunity to appoint someone temporarily to fill that gap, to encourage those that would run to run. I'm not sure in a special election we would get the showing. I don't know if the city's in a place that we would get a good show out. And I would fear, if I were still at this dais, that I would fear that we would go unopposed and we would have a special election and no one got in. And the perception that the city would have on the council and the mayor and the leadership of the city that would carry, and it would be an emotional event for the city, I believe.
Ms. Salgado?
Just to kind of speak to what you were saying, because obviously I've had similar thoughts. I really, truly believe that as far as we need to, I just completely lost my train of thought. Suzanne, you go next.
Okay. I just had Ms. Brooks, on average, what's the average cost to the city when we run a special election?
What was the one that we had first?
30,000. No, it was like 30,000.
This election for the regular cycle, it's over 16,000. So if we do the bond election, it could be even more. To fill a vacancy, like what you're talking about, it's probably
I was just curious. Thank you.
Mr. Trailer.
Like to make a motion. Let me take a look and see what I want to put in there. Hold on. We have a lot in here. Do you have something else you want to say? Hold on.
Yes. Well, I only remembered half. I don't know what's going on with my brain tonight. So I'm struggling. You really threw me off, Daniel. No. One of the things I was going to say is I think that we've never put it before the citizens before for them to tell us, do they want council to appoint or do they want to always hold a special election? So to kind of your point that they've elected us, and we appoint other boards on the city, I think that that's definitely a valid thought, but my thought is I want to put it on the ballot to put it before the residents, and they get to tell us in the end, we trust you so much, we always want you to appoint, or we want to always have the final say. And that was one of the things I was going to say.
I can make a motion to amend Section 3.05 forfeitures and vacancies of the Forney City Council of the Forney City Charter. Vacancies in the council and or mayor will remain, vacancies with the council and or mayor 90 days or less to the next general election will be filled in the term of an appointment versus remain vacant. Vacancies in the city council and or mayor must be filled by special election. And if the vacancy is a result of a voluntary resignation, he or she is ineligible to run for future city council or mayor positions until 3 completed terms have passed.
No.
I propose Mayor Lewis's amendment here with the amendment of appointing within 90 days. I do think we need that 7th member within the 90 days.
So, okay. Okay, let me see if I can repeat this motion. The motion on the table is to amend Section 3.05. Vacancies in the council or the mayor will remain unfilled if the vacancy is due to a resignation. No, that's the one you want to take out. Is that correct?
I want to appoint members 90 days or less.
Okay.
So actually, I want to full.
I'm going to take that part out. Okay, let me repeat this. So vacancies in the council or mayor must be filled at a special election unless a general election that would fill the vacant is scheduled to occur within 90 days after the vacancy occurred.
Change that to 120 days. So 120 days is what you said, correct? Within 120 days.
If it's within 120 days, you have to have a special election. It's less than that, 90 days or whatever you can go by.
So 120 days.
Or less.
Okay, the vacancies in the council and mayor must be filled at a special election unless a general election that would have filled the vacant is scheduled to occur within 120 days after the vacancy occurred, correct? And if the vacancy is a result of a voluntary resignation, he or she is ineligible to run for future city council or mayor positions until 3 completed terms have passed. Is there anything else in the motion?
Hold on. Voluntary resignation. Yeah. That's an issue I need to discuss as well. So if somebody's resigning to run for another position, that is considered a voluntary resignation.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And also, if they are ill.
If it's related to a medical.
Or like family.
Okay, let's talk about the 100 days, 90 days, 20 days, and then let's go to the voluntary vacancy. So can you amend your motion for what you would like on the 120 days, please?
I can make a motion to amend Section 3.05 of the Forney City Charter. First part of my motion will include vacancies of the Forney City Council. Must be filled at a special election. If the general election that would fill the vacant place is scheduled to occur within 120 days of the vacancy. Any vacancies 120 days and or less would be filled via appointment of the current Forney City Council. And that's all I'm going to include in this motion.
Thank you. Okay, did everybody follow that? Yes. Okay, is there a second? Second. Like a second from Ms. Salgado. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, I'll call for a vote on that one. Motion carries with one not nay, and that's Mr. Daniel FMU. So the second part of this is a voluntary resignation. So if somebody resigns because of an illness, what would you recommend, Ms. Primos? If are they eligible to rerun?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if a family member crisis or something of that nature, which can be voted on, and they don't, have to explain everything. But if they resign because they are dramatic, absolutely not.
Well, that could be played either way then, I'm afraid.
I'd like to say that resignations due to disqualification for running for city council would be the only reason that I would amend, that I would allow, my opinion, that people should be allowed to rerun. So if they're moving out of the district, if there are other items that forces them to resign because they are no longer qualified to run. If we have other types of reasons to resign, fortunately, this is a commitment regardless of time and personal effect that we have told the voters we're going to continue with throughout the process. It's my perspective.
So are you saying that, for example, if someone has cancer and they get better, they cannot come back?
Unfortunately, at this time, I think we have to draw hard lines somewhere because there are things that are subjective, and as a council, we are not allowed to federal law, to dig into people's personal lives and understand what is going on medically with them, and nor would I want to. But I do think there needs to be clear-cut, non-ambiguous language in this, and I don't know what that looks like.
Right. So they can come back after 3 terms, but it's not.
100%.
After 3 terms. I understand what you're saying. After 3 terms, but it's not like they can never come back.
So they can come back after 3 terms.
After 3 terms.
And that's-
No matter what.
That would,
If we get if it's approved, 3 terms we put in there that we're asking the citizens to vote. Yes, 3 terms for 3 years. After three terms for 3.
I mean, 9 years is a lifetime.
yeah. So 3 years, 3 cycles.
One election cycle. Seems like that would be more.
Right. 3
would
So that
3
would-
years is
One
1
election.
term.
Hey,
3 years, 1 term.
Completed terms. If we go to 3 year terms, Sarah and I are sitting here doing the math. That's 9 years. So my motion would be is that they would be eligible to run after 1 term has, the next 3-year cycle has gone about. That should, I don't see anybody who's going to be willing to jump in, sit back 9 years later and want to be a part of this. That's a little extreme.
I got to, we always talking about let the voters, let them decide. Let them decide if they want them back on the council. If they come back, let the voters decide. I don't think we should put stipulations on it, on that part of it. I think the voters, we're doing everything else by the voters. The voters vote. If they want them back and they know they quit on them, they should vote them out. But if the voters want them back, hey, they should come back.
Back to what you were saying on one, if we were to allow them to come back after 1 election term. So if I quit mid-term, does that mean the next term, whoever's up for the next year, that term, that's just really like 4 years? Or is it the current term? Is it your current?
Yeah, 1.5 years.
Yeah, it could be very confusing. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ms. Salgado.
I was just going to say, I just want to make sure we're not costing the city money if we have someone resign and then we hold a special election to elect someone new, and then a year and a half, 2 years later, they come back and rerun, even though we had to hold a special election to take care of them needing to vacate for whatever reason. So I don't really know how to address it. That's just a thought.
I think this one's a dangerous precedent we need to leave alone. I don't know if this could be violating election law. There's all kinds of issues that could be here. I don't think we can disqualify people from wanting to put their name on a ballot, period. In my opinion, let's stop, move on. This one needs to burn, go away. It's my perspective.
So not table it, just throw it out.
No, I think this needs to go away. And Mr. Chambers won me over. He's right. It's not up to us to decide. It's not. Let's not put limitations on people out there. This is it. This is it. And I don't want to violate election law. And honestly, at the end of the day, he's 100% correct. If somebody walks away and wants to come back and the voters say, I want you, let's let them have them. It's up to that.
So as long as they meet the criteria.
100%. 100%. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're getting in the weeds with this, and I don't want to split hairs. And I agree with Cecil. We're sitting here saying we want people to have the right to vote for it. So I concur.
Excuse me. Thank you, guys. We have just a few more. Section 3.10, rules and procedures. It's about adding, mayor must have a second to add to the agenda, which is already the policy. We'll just adhere to that policy moving forward. And that is no, I have one more, excuse me. Article 6, initiative, referendum, and recall, Section 6.05, presentation of petitions. This is one that I'm very passionate about. This was changed a few years ago, and the rule is that in order to remove somebody, it's more difficult to remove somebody from office right now. It's 20% or 400, whichever is greater. I would like to return back to the original charter agreement, which is 10% of the registered voters of the city of Forney who voted in the last general municipal election, or 200, whichever is greater. It shouldn't be more difficult for us to remove an elected official. Ms. Salgado?
I was just going to comment on this because I remember when this was on the ballot, when this was changed, and whatever we decide to do with all these different things going on the ballot, we have got to educate the residents on what the intention is or what the possible outcomes of voting either way. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I remember so many people talking about this. They had no idea what this meant. The language was, I was like, what am I reading? And there was no communications from the city beforehand about the changes that were going to be on the ballot. And this one particularly, I think that people literally had no idea what they were voting on. So with all these different things on the ballot.
Can we take a brief 2-minute recess?
One moment, let her finish her comment.
So I think all the different things on the ballot, we need to make sure that they're understanding what these numbers and these figures and percentages mean.
We'll now take a 5-minute recess. Let me just read this to you. Right now, the charter reads, a petition to the City Council containing signatures of qualified voters not less than equal in number to 10%, or those who voted in the last general election, or 200, whichever is greater, shall be filed with the City Council no later than 30 days. But then, a petition to the City Council for recall is 20% of registered voters, or 400, whichever is greater. And I would like those to both be the same, 10% and 200.
Motion to approve as presented.
I have a motion from Mr. Traylor. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Salgado. Any further discussion or questions? Then I'll call for a vote for this to be placed on the ballot for the voters. Motion carries unanimously. On to boards and commissions. This is section 8.01, the authority, composition, and procedures. There were two recommendations, one from Ms. Primos and one from Ms. Schlensker. Ms. Primos' recommendation is for nominees for any board or seat must appear before council to speak and answer questions, as we did this evening. Ms. Schlensker made a suggestion: in order to remove a board member, council will require a supermajority vote. Board members will be limited to 3 consecutive terms on a board, and after serving, they may apply to a different board. I think, Ms. Primos, unless you have any more suggestions, I think that one was a good call.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to amend Section 8.01 of the Forney City Charter, requiring nominees to appear before City Council to speak and answer questions prior to being appointed to any board.
Okay. I have a motion on the table that nominees for any board or seat must appear before council to speak and answer questions prior to being nominated. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Primos. Any further discussion? Then I'll call for a vote. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Schlensker, would you like to speak to your suggestions or withdraw?
No, I would. I think what we've talked about on several occasions is the political climate and protecting our citizens. And we've seen that if we have a new majority come in, there's the ability to sway politically, good, bad, and different. So I think that it's important, if a board member is doing something that is deserving of being removed, then it is our duty to remove them regardless of political climate. But I think that this is putting in protection that we're trying to get more and more people on our boards. We're talking about why people don't do it is because of political climate. So this is a protection to it. I think also that if we're looking at our term limits, we don't want somebody to get on a board and become comfortable. I think it's important that we continue to evolve. So my point is that if you want to serve 3 terms at 3 years or whatever we choose to set, then that's fine. And then after that, if you'd like to continue to serve, there's plenty of other boards to move on to.
The term limits are now 2 years, so that hasn't changed. Mr. Traylor.
Make a motion to approve Ms. Schlinsker's suggestions as presented.
I have a motion on the table to
amend Section 8.01 of the Forney City Charter, requiring board members, council requires supermajority vote to remove board members
second? Second. Okay, discussion. Ms. Salgado?
I was just going to say, I think that a simple majority is enough, that I don't think we want to make it more difficult to remove someone from a board that we feel is not serving where they need to. I think a simple majority of the council is enough. But I am on board, so I'm not on board for that, but I am on board with the term limits, or the 3 consecutive terms, and then ask them to be on a different board. I think that is a really good idea. Very good idea.
I'm going to pass it to you.
Oh, okay.
For you to answer that one, and then I'll come back to the first
Well,
one.
I understand that. I just think that there's a protection level that, again, if somebody is doing a good job on the board, their political views may not match with what's the majority, and not ever knowing who's going to be sitting up here, that it's a protection that's given to them, that as long as they're doing their job, they're good. Again, if somebody is doing something that is out of state where they should be removed, then that's on the council to remove them. That is our duty to do it. So I just look at it as another layer of protection. Again, if somebody's not doing their job, they're not doing their job, they need to be removed, period.
For comment, supermajority is 6 members. It would take 6 members to remove somebody instead of just a normal No, it says 6. Mr. Daniel?
I just wanted to, I know that I didn't get a chance to hit it fast enough, but to Councilwoman Primus, for Sandy's comments, the application process for the boards, that concerns me. And I think that is definitely something that council should relook to ensure that if we don't get the people in person, that we revisit that. Tonight was a great showing. I just want to make sure that if that doesn't happen, the application process, we have a better application process so that those applications have more data to make a decision off of. So I know we voted on it, but I just wanted to come back to it because I didn't get to it in time.
Mr. Shirley corrected, and he's that we have it in our, I believe it's in our charter.
Council rules.
Council rules said it's actually 5 for supermajority. For some reason, at one point, I thought we had 6. But, it's so the zoning supermajority is a different number than regular supermajority. There you go. Now you can.
It wasn't true. It was me.
Oh, okay, whatever. Okay. Thank you. I was wondering where that number came from. So, yes, if you have to overturn a P&Z ruling, it has to be 6 out of the 7. Okay, this is 5 out of 7. Okay. It's regular. All right. So there's a motion on the table and a second. In order to remove a board member, council will require a supermajority vote, which is 5. In this case, board members will be limited to 3 consecutive terms on a board, and after serving, they may apply to a different board. Is there any further discussion or questions? Okay. I'll call for a vote to place it on the ballot in November. Motion carries unanimously. Our last charter amendment tonight, actually we don't have any more. We already gone ahead and made all these motions. Thank you for your input. Yes, we're going to go on to rules and procedures. Okay. Yes. So that is all for the
Hold on. Cecil had one he wanted to add.
Oh, yes. Would you like to discuss districts?
Oh, yeah, districts. So we're talking about. So we're all 7 on the board, city council today. We have 5 out of our 7 city councilmen live on the south side. Today, Mr. Nook, he got up today, we're talking about the water pressures. No one knew about that but me on the north side. I don't think I think when you run as a council in a particular area, I think you should be held accountable. You should be an advocate to where you live. And I don't think that overall, I don't think our citizens are being served today as it should be. I think we should take ownership of where we're at. I think if you look at these previous councils that we had up here, a lot of them are living in the same subdivisions. A lot of them are living in about a block, maybe a mile away, 2 miles away on the same side. James and I are the only one on the north side. I think we need to engage our constituents. They need to know who we are. They need to we need to represent them, be held accountable to the people that in the area that we live in, so they can always come to us. They know who we are as their councilmen. And I think this at-large stuff, if we want to give it to the voters, I think this is at-large stuff. Everybody can come and play, and I don't think it's a healthy way of doing council. I think we just need to be held more accountable and be more engaged with our issues and concerns within our community that we live in. And we also, the information that we get from councils, we can disperse that in our community that we live in. Instead of we having a broad 7-seat council that's at large, they don't know who to go to and talk to. I've been having folks from the south side call me and talk to me on some stuff, and I'll take care of it because that's what I'm supposed to do as a council. But I think if that person live in that particular district, they don't know their council person, that's an issue to me. So I'm open up for this.
Are you proposing district?
Yes.
District representation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Trailer?
Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect between north and south side. The railroad track is going to define that dividing line for us. We, historically have seen more representation on the south side versus north. Let's face it, there are different issues that both sides here that we need to represent. Right now, currently, we're close to 30,000 residents. Is that correct? Close to 30,000 residents inside city limits. Once again, I'm very new to this. I agree that we need diverse representation with different areas inside the city of Forney because we all have different needs, right? It's just there's a different socioeconomic climate from just a half mile away, and it's very real. And there's at one point we had I think two members residing in Greyhawk and 2 towards downtown, and it really doesn't represent Chestnut Meadows. I mean, it really doesn't represent homes off Bowie. Doesn't really represent Diamond Creek versus the other side of the tracks here. Gateway as well. So yeah, I agree with Cecil. We need to make sure that we have representation. And once again, the only drawback I have here is how are we going to get representation? That's been my biggest kickback all night is making sure we actually get representation and get the climate there. So open to suggestions.
Ms. Primus?
So I've had that concern since I've been here. So are we talking about actually, because what you're saying, I understand, Cecil, but Sarah and I live across the street from each other, so we would be covering the same thing. We're back and forth. So I'm wondering, is there a way to have place 1 has this area, 2 has this area, regardless of where you actually live, or we could do it close to where you live, but every time we change council, if a person lives a different place, but I believe 1 here, no matter where you live, 2 here, 3, so people know you are district place 3, and then they know who their city council person is and who to go to.
Yeah, it's not about individual on the table, it's just about
Cecil.
area.
Right. What if, that's what I'm saying, we don't have that, right? We don't have that, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sarah, no, go ahead. Well,
I think Cecil's wanting to finish.
okay, shut down. Cecil, it's your turn.
Right. Whoever wants to talk, and I'll talk in a minute. So,
Mr. Chambers.
I don't think it's an individual deal. I think it's an area deal. So if you and Sarah live in the same spot, well, if you draw the line in that area and y'all fit in the same spot, only one of you guys can run for that spot. So what I'm saying is the representation of the whole city, I don't think we're doing the citizens a good service. What I'm saying is we just need to break it down. Wherever the lines draw, I don't know where they're going to be. I mean, that's something in the future if we decide to go that way. Well, the citizens decide to go that way. We'll come up with someone will come up with an area that suits everybody in their districts.
Ms. Brooks.
Only the person that lives in that particular district can be voted on for that district. If there's 2 of you, you run against each other. So,
Who's seen Hunger Games? It's kind of like that. We have districts, and we're going to serve a tribute to those districts is what we're doing.
I'm pretty sure we already are tributes from our districts. So, What I was going to say is I really like the idea of equalizing 3 council members from the north side, 3 from the south, mayor at large. I think that's a really good thing to look towards. I've read a lot of city charters. This is what I've done for quite a while now. I've read tons of city charters around us, and what I've noticed is only the cities that are quite a bit larger than us do districts, probably because of all the reasons that we talked about tonight. Not enough people running, not enough representation. I know Mesquite, for example, does do districts, but they only went to districts in 2018, and they're, huge. So I wonder if we could maybe say that we want to move towards districts once our population comes at a certain number, and we reevaluate it every 10 years based on the census if we need to readjust area lines or boundary lines, or I don't know. I think it's definitely something really good to look towards. I don't know if we're quite there yet on size, but I don't know.
The caveat that I think you're thinking of is a population number. So when we hit a certain number, then districts can be evaluated. Mr. Smith, but I do know that only one person can be running.
You want to go, Cecil? My concern, I think the districts is a fantastic idea. I guess my larger concern is, I shouldn't say concern, if anybody reaches out to you, regardless of where you live, I think that's important. Maybe they felt more comfortable reaching out to you for whatever reason. That's an opportunity for you to bring that low water pressure on the north side to this desk. Because that is something everybody should know of. Because if that's a concern to the folks that live in North Forney, then that should be a concern right here. Everybody should be aware of that. So, because I live on South Side. If someone from the North Side came to me and said, hey, voice my opinion, because we don't have districts and each one of us represents the entirety of the population, I would make sure that I bring that back. This goes back to my initial comments that once the election's over, we don't slow down. This is where outreach has to take place. This is where they need to know all the great things they're doing. Had you not brought up the water pressure tonight, a lot of people wouldn't even be aware that that's even an issue. So the mere fact that someone reached out to you that's outside of it to bring up that fact spurs the conversation. And I would expect everybody who sits up here that regardless if someone in or out of district brings up something as important as water pressure, they share that with the council moving forward. So my initial thoughts.
Mr. Chambers?
I can count right now. I'm not putting nobody on blast. Right now we count how many people live on the north side and the south side today. I can tell you, James and I live on the north side. So I don't know if people are trying to protect their seats. I think it should go to the voters, let the voters decide, like we do in everything else today. Hey, I serve my community because I love my community. I know where I live. It's not about sitting at the seat. I got a family. I got a career. I mean, it's not about that. It's about being represented. And I think the area that you live in needs someone that they actually knows you, whoever that person may be. It could be me, it could be Bob, John, Cecil, Greg, whoever that person is, that's the person they need to go to. That's my thought.
Well, and I agree, but I also say that if the north side wants to be represented just like the south side, run. I mean, we were just talking, Sarah and I were talking about, she's in Greyhawk, Daniel's in Gateway, Jason was in Gateway, I'm in Dalview, Sandy's in Overland, you're in Diamond Creek, James, I believe it's Bluffview, right? Skyline. So if you look at the different subdivisions that we have, we're actually representing a large majority of the folks in our city. They may not all be on the north or the south side, but each major subdivision is represented. And I think I go with Sarah on the fact that when we hit a certain number, I do think we look at that. I don't think we're there yet. But this is where we're planning for the future. And we start talking about this now, because this is not something that we're just going to be able to draw a quick map and say this works. But I think that's something that council is going to have to decide, and by looking at other cities and see when they did decide it, what population, was it that they decided to do it. I agree with the representation, but I would say that people have to come out and run, too.
Mr. Trailer?
Trying to think. Just give me a second here so I can compose my thoughts. Mr. Chambers, would you be amenable possibly to instead of a district system, a north and south side representation system, trying to more represent the north side? Basically put a minimum for that. I don't know if that'd be a scenario, because right now I think drawing district systems It may be difficult, but I agree. There needs to be more representation on the north side. I mean, because over and over what I hear is that people on the north side don't feel represented, not just by this body, by several bodies in the city. And I want to make sure that representation is fair and diverse.
My question was, or my thought was, would you be open to the idea of, yes, we examine this once our population hits a certain number and we decide what that number should be tonight, that we revisit this? I don't know, Jenny left. I don't know how we put that down officially, that once our population reaches a certain number, council comes back to address the idea. Ms. Brooks?
I'll be more than happy to research what needs to happen for this. You can't, if we amend the charter this year, we can't amend it for 2 years. So that would give plenty of time to research and know where we're going forward, and you can always amend it to provide for districts if necessary.
Can we do the research now and table this to our next meeting so we don't let too much time pass so we can actually understand more fully? Because I don't know how to make it work. I don't know the answer to that.
That's fine.
Would you be okay with that, Mr. Chambers? We actually do some research on this item. We're going to, we table this one specific item just until next meeting. That way. Or is everybody okay with that solution? Motion table, this agenda, this specific item. Okay, good.
I'll second it.
Question, I just want to make sure, are you considering doing like 3 places north and then 3 places? Is that what kind of what we were talking about? Maybe
No, I don't know.
You have no idea?
Yeah, we have to look more into it.
Okay, I don't know if I have to officially do this, but we're going to go do a motion on the table, and a motion from Mr. Traylor and a second from Mr. Chambers, just to make sure that we have it on the next agenda. Yes. To table this discussion to find more information on how we can pull the trigger to re-examine districts and do districting in the future to the next city council meeting. Any more discussion or questions? Yeah. Okay, this official will get us on the agenda for next time. Let's call for a vote to table it to next in 2 weeks.